Welcome to the Mystic Detectives podcast, where we seek to unlock the wonders of the unknown. I'm one of your hosts, Crystal Miller.
And I'm your other host, Andrea Marziano. Good to see you, Crystal. How goes it?
It's going good. Had some fun drama over my birthday, but other than that, it's going pretty good. How about for you?
Well, luckily I haven't had any fun drama or drama of any kind. Things are great. I just was going to let you know I saw something super cool here. I live on a property in Washington that has ponds and creeks. And one of the ponds is stocked with trout. My partner puts the trout in, and we mostly just watch it and let it live. And occasionally the grandkids will come and fish because it's a super adventurous experience. They put their lines in the water, and about 4.5 seconds later, the fish come crawling out. They're very domesticated trout. But it's exciting for the littles because it's about as much attention span as they have. And the trout taste good, and so it's fun. But we don't fish them very often. Mostly we just enjoy watching them. And when they see us walk up, because we do augment their food in the wintertime, they will come. I mean, it's just, what do fish come in schools? A school of fish will come up and just roil the water because they're just so excited to get fed. And then when we throw the fish out to them, it's like there are sharks in there going, ah, and so they get it. But because of the fish, part of the circle of life is that we get some amazing birds out here. I love to watch the birds. Max isn't as excited because they come and eat the fish. But the other day I was walking from one part of the property to the other, and there were 3 bald eagles circling above the property. And then I saw them light up in the trees, and it was interesting because I watched them for a few minutes because I always find animals fascinating. And the 2 birds apparently knew each other, but the 3rd bird seemed to be an unknown or an unwanted bird. So I watched their acrobatics up in the air. I never saw anything untoward occur, but it was just interesting to watch them interact above my head. And they went up into the high part of our trees. And then I went in because, I had some stuff to do, but it was interesting. And the other bird we have are heron, big blue heron. And they're like the modern day pterodactyl, just watching them fly in, and they're so huge. Mm-hmm. And I just love being out here, even though I know that they eat the birds or they kill the birds. The fish. It's just so interesting, and watching how that goes. And then of course, watching the circle of life. And anyway, that was my fun a few days ago. I just really enjoyed it. And I love living out here because we're in the trees.
It's funny that you bring up birds, because 2 nights ago, I had a dream that I was a bird, and I can't remember the name of the bird. I'm sure one of you two will probably know it, but it's that one that has the big scoop bill.
The pelican?
Is it a pelican? Okay. Mm-hmm. I was afraid I was being too simple, but yeah, I don't know why, but that was a dream I had 2 nights ago, that I was a pelican. Weird.
Did you go to an all-you-can-eat sushi buffet or something?
No, I didn't.
Fill up your pelican pouch?
And I don't even like to eat most fish.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I just find birds really fascinating. And everybody's probably heard our guest voice so far today. Holly, will you tell us about yourself and what your titles are these days?
Yeah, I'll tell you my title these days is Doctor of Economics, because I just defended my PhD in economics. So hi, I'm Holly Hatfield. I'm an economist that's here to talk to you about tarot. I am not representing my employer with any of my opinions here. What are you saying, Crystal?
Is there an economics term for that?
There's an economics term for that. You're gonna find out that the intersections between economics and tarot are actually not as far apart as you might think. So, but yeah, I think that's the main thing I'm here to talk about. Unless y'all have other things that you wanted to bring up. Just to mention, we're old friends. Crystal and I are sisters, but Andrea and I were also old friends, the 3 of us, and we kind of have raised the same brood of children over the past 20 years. So,
and if we really did some of the counting, it's more than 20.
Oh, it's 20 many years ago.
So tell us first, Holly Sue, about how you got into tarot, how you discovered it, what interested you about it, etc. Kind of your history with tarot.
Yeah. Okay. So the year was 2006. I was living in Pleasant Grove or American Fork, Utah, as a loan officer and processor, helping to set up the Great Recession at my job. And I was bored and I didn't have anything to do. And so I was surfing the internet. Facebook was brand new. I was surfing the internet looking, for ways to feel like existing mattered and, those types of things when you have an office job. And I was doing horoscopes and just kind of looking for something. And I came across a website that did offered a tarot reading. And I, clicked the buttons and it said, one card popped up and it was some deck I've never seen. Again, I don't know what it was. It was like a black card of a scorpion. I think it was an ace of something. But just as I read the words about it, the question I'd gone into it was like, what do I need in my life to feel more fulfilled? And kind of the words that just popped in my head was like, looking at that picture and reading the description was like, you need to have a relationship with your dad. And it was so random and it was so out of the blue and it was so unexpected. But like the minute that I thought it, like it was such a relief. It was like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? Our dad basically had the attitude of teenagers are a nuisance and the sooner you can get rid of them, the better. And so, my early 20s, I just never bothered to build a relationship once I left the house, and got away from him. So I decided to become friends with my dad and just try it out. And he and I are great pals. As you know, Crystal and I've worked a lot with him too on all kinds of endeavors. But it was so cool. It was such an interesting experience that I immediately left work and I ordered a tarot deck online. I went to Barnes and Noble and bought a tarot deck and I bought a bunch of books and I just started like doing anything I could to figure out what had happened to me. Like
Wow.
what was this thing and how did it work?
So as soon as you heard it, it felt like truth to you then.
Yeah. And it was, again, I didn't understand it at the time. It was the voice in the back of my head type of thing. And we can talk about, what I think that is today and how I feel about that, and how it relates to tarot and how tarot's taught me, how to deal with some of these voices in my head. Yeah. So from there, I just decided to start toying around with it and messing around with it and learning about it. And I was willing to give readings to anybody that was willing to let me learn. And I became a professional card reader for over probably, well, God, I do it now if I need to raise money, it's a great way to make some money if I need to, but I read cards for friends and family all the time still. So, and I don't just read cards, I use my cards for lots of other things. So tarot's not just like, let me read your future, but it's more a way of helping me organize my thoughts when they're more chaotic than I can handle. It helps me kind of find areas of focus in my thoughts. And then from that, I can do better thinking, I feel like it.
One of the things I was going to speak to is when you said the voices in your head. And I know we all sort of say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but I feel like a lot of the people that we've talked to, and correct me if you don't feel this way, Crystal, but that a lot of the people that have discovered mystic gifts over their lifetime have had that sort of feeling, like there were thoughts and feelings that they just couldn't place or describe, and once they saw it, they really knew how it fit for them. That's what I've gotten from what I've heard from people, and I know from my personal experience that's true. Do you feel that, Crystal, or have you heard that in some of the talks we've had with people?
Yeah, it's kind of like something that just doesn't come from myself. I can't reconcile it as a thought of my own.
Yeah. And so when you alluded, Holly, to maybe having a different opinion than that right now. So although it may not be in the course of where you might have thought we'd talk, what do you feel those, you were saying what you thought were voices in your head before, but do you have a different feeling on that?
So what I, think about it now as is, again, I'm an economist, I'm not a psychologist, but Jungian psychology, just me studying it as a layperson, Carl Jung talked about a lot of this and a lot of why tarot is effective. In particular is the work of Carolyn Meese. I've got her book, Enter the Temple Sacred Contracts. I can't remember what the name of her book is. I've got a couple of them, just over my shoulder here. But the psychologists and theologians, right, that come together and they try to study how these experiences happen for people. And so what I understand it to be now is what Jung called the collective unconscious. And the idea is that all human beings are actually droplets out of the ocean, and we, form into our lives, and then we go back into the ocean, and we can actually have access, to human knowledge and humanness through this psychological experience. So from a biological level, yeah, there's DNA, and that DNA gives us access to all of the history of human experience from like a material biological perspective. But we also can have access to it from a psychological perspective by tapping into, in particular, archetypes or human experiences that all of us can relate to. So to give an example of this, if I tell you, hey man, it was a real Robin Hood story, you know exactly what I mean. You know details. I gave you 4 words about this. You know details, you know characters, you know relationships. You can understand power dynamics, economic dynamics in just me talking, pulling on this archetype for you, right? Another one, like it was a whole Cinderella situation. You get it. And it comes deep to your core because every human being has had these kinds of experiences. It's part of what it is to be human. But through our stories and through images and through, you know, these types of systems of thinking that we can pass down, we gain access to those things. And you consciously tap into it or not, you know, like, you know, but that's my understanding of it.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. And I feel like the more I've learned about my own mystic or skills and gifts, and the more I talk to people about it, the more I feel like that tracks. And what's interesting is that even though we are Americans and we have those stories, I feel like every culture I've heard, and I obviously haven't heard of everything, they have things that resonate in a similar way, where it may be about an entirely different sort of experience, but the story is there. And which I don't feel like is an accident, that I feel like those stories are part of our collective, if you will, and part of what is just ingrained in the human experience as we understand it now. And our listeners might now be able to hear that Holly is not a light thinker of anything. Holly is a very deep dive thinker of things. And that's one of the things that I find really interesting, especially because so many people think that mystic skills, abilities, sort of gifts are just woo-woo, if you will. And there are people who have these skills and gifts that have done very much deep thinking and research and scientific evidence and all of that into these things. So I find it really interesting that you, even in the first 3 minutes, have brought forth some of that evidence. If we believe it to be evidence, it's evidence, and I believe it, to be making this a more scientific and a less just woo-woo sort of experience. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll correct you just a little bit. I would say it's a theory.
Yes.
So it's a
Yes.
theory about how it all works. And if it helps us exist better in our world, that's awesome, you know.
So that makes me think of sorry to bring in TikTok, but that makes me think of a TikTok I saw where, and I can see how this could relate to tarot. Like, for example, if I say to you, you got to fight for your right, you're going to think something after that, right? Right. And so the way I see that is like, you got to fight for the right, and you need the tarot to help you see to party, right?
Fill in the blank, or
Fill in the
learn
blank.
a language of blanks, you know, that
Yeah.
can be filled in there.
Yeah. So why don't you give us a brief history on, you kind of touched on it, and I know this isn't necessarily tarot specific, but you led a group for a long time that studied A Course in Miracles. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us what A Course in Miracles is, and then why it's an important book to you, and kind of what you found in those studies.
You want just A Course in Miracles, or do you want to go all the way back to Disappearance of the Universe?
Oh, God. Okay, so for our listeners, The Disappearance of the Universe is a fantastic book, but it really might muck you up. It makes you self-reflect like drinking from a fire hose. So go ahead, let's start from there, Holly.
Well, I love reading, and I'm trying to figure out, well, it's not even just reading. I love learning. I love to learn things, right? And one of the things that I've just always been really about, my personality, is just kind of, what are we all doing here? And what is the purpose of all of this? I was raised in a super religious, Mormon environment in Utah, and I threw all in with that until my early 20s, and I was a Mormon missionary, and I did, things there, but it really put me ill at ease because it just didn't feel right. So I've been kind of a seeker of truth and a seeker of knowledge because of that, looking lots of different places. around the time that I discovered tarot, you were also starting a business, right? That you invited me to be a part of, the Crystal Ray, which was a shop where we not only sold things, but we also created community spaces for people to be in. And ever since then, I've at other coffee shops like to find, the opportunity to create little community spaces, book clubs, gathering places, just places for to have good conversations with people about hard questions in life. And it's interesting, I can always find about half a dozen people that are willing to do that. And it's not that hard to, get a regular practice coming together. These days, when you pay money for it, it's called group therapy. But in the olden days, we just called that community. And so, yeah, we did the Course of Miracles for a year, or no, it's 2 or 3 years at our friend Lisa Stariana and Troy Walker's coffee shop. And the idea of it is that storytelling, talking about our experiences, sitting in a circle, going around the fire and going through that, these are ancient practices. And so book clubs practice the same thing, right? But us coming together and trying to understand our experiences helps us have power in the world, because and not like power over things, but like the power to make good things happen, or to solve problems, or to create love, or to stop, stop bad things from happening. And the storytelling that we do through community, I think, is how we wrap our head around that, and how we make sure that we don't make mistakes with that. In the same principle, that's also kind of how tarot works. So tarot is a system of images. We put them on cards, but it's a system of images. So there's 78 cards in a deck. There's 5 suits, and 4 of those suits are almost exactly the same as a deck of playing cards. It goes 1 through 10. You have Jack, Knight, King, Queen. So same thing as a deck of playing cards in principle. Then they have 1 extra suit, which is called the Major Arcana. And that's where you get all the scary Hollywood cards, right? Ooh, Hangman, death. Ah! The idea is that these images have been created such that they represent the 5 different ways in which our lives kind of play out, right? And there's the Major Arcana, which is called the Fool's Journey, and that's, card number 0. It's the circle, right? It's this card of the beginning and the end, and this idea of like we're all always just living in the revolution of the seasons, and we're all just living in the revolution of the planet, and so on. The other cards of the minor suit represent kind of those daily ordeals we deal with. Poverty sucks. Hey, you like me? Good. New friend, lost friend. Just cards that represent these things. And you put them all together and you have a life. Yeah, you have a rich life of ups and downs and small unimportant moments and dramatic life, changing moments. And now, as a person who's reflecting on your life, you can look through these images and say, what am I missing in this story? I'm so freaking angry. I'm so mad. I know I'm right, but maybe I'm missing something in this story. I'll just pick a random image and see if I can get some new insight into my problems here, because I'm stuck. And it creates kind of this gateway into humanity of like, what have other people been through? Well, other people have been through this moment before, so let's see what they have to say. The images make them really accessible. You don't have to learn a language, right? All of us can see a story. A picture's worth 1,000 words. But in general, people follow the system, right? So the 5 of Cups is always going to look like a 5 of Cups. This is the Rider-Waite system. There are some deviant ones, but the Rider-Waite system is kind of like the King James version of the tarot deck. Everybody kind of defaults to it. So anyway, in the end, coming together, having conversations with people, sharing stories, right, is also kind of the whole nature of what tarot is really about, is us getting through our problems together. And we can do that with book clubs. We can do it with readings. You can do it on your own, just through your own practices.
We have in a town I lived in and have just moved out of, we had what we called beer church. So every Sunday morning we would go. My friend Dave, who owns a brewery, said there's so much hate and so much everything going on, and also keyboard warriors, where they would express their opinion in shots in the dark but not really talk about anything. So he decided to create what he called beer church, and it was not in any way religious, but he just called it church because it was on Sunday. And we would meet together. We would have breakfast and a beverage if a person wanted, and he would bring up a topic and we would discuss it. And actually, after a while, we started a fun little tradition where they said they found the ancient scrolls in the parking lot, and they started translating it. And then I did what we were calling the Book of Menopausians, and it was really funny. And those were all obviously very tongue in cheek, but a similar idea, because it gave us an opportunity to come together and to talk about things. They encouraged us to shift tables every week, so not the same people were sitting together all the time. That actually didn't really happen because the people who came knew each other, and the venue was small enough that we could holler across the tables anyway. But it was similar to what you're speaking about. And sometimes we would talk about really serious, in-depth things like what makes a sandwich, and other times it was more actual events. There was a shooting of a tribal member in town that people were very, very upset about for a lot of different reasons, and we won't go into that now, but there were very polarized situations, and it gave us all a chance to come and speak. And one of the tribal members actually came to Bear Church for a very serious topic, and we discussed it there. And so it was nice because we were already friends, we were already a group, and we knew that we were in a safe space. And so that's, I feel like, one of the things that the group can do is provide us that safe space. And with these tarot cards giving us an opportunity to maybe it doesn't say now tomorrow you go do X, Y, and Z, but it can give some clarity to some people who are seeking it. So that really resonates with me as well.
Yeah, I used to do the same thing, but it was Buffalo Wild Wings. That was our church.
Right. I've been to that church.
But we did have beer. We did have beer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not that hard usually to find, 6 people who want to have conversations about meaningful topics that are willing to have them, in an area. I think that a lot of us have just forgotten to look, and that's.
You were saying something, and I'm going way, way back, but I was thinking about, talking about finding places to have these conversations. And I remembered that most library rooms are free. You just have to reserve them. And they're isolated, so they're either isolated / insulated, so you can have a conversation about anything you want. Nobody's going to know what you're talking about. And so I think that I just want to share that, because if you're thinking about having a group, consider having it in your library. They'll often let you reserve something on a recurring basis. The reservation's the big thing. So
Yeah, and I also find that one of the nice things with tarot in particular is that it kind of creates this safe space outside of people to talk about their problems, right? So as a reader, if you want to become a tarot card reader, all you got to do is memorize the cards, practice giving people readings, and take feedback. And then you'll be a card reader. That's all you really need to do. Whether you want to get really hardcore or mystic about it, whether you want to, get really if you want to lean into numerology because there is numerology in it, or if you want to lean into astrology because there is astrology in it, or if you want to, lean into weather pattern. I mean, there's all the elements are a huge part of how the tarot is organized. If you want to focus on any one of those aspects of it, you're allowed to. You can also get a deck that is, themed on something that you really prefer the theme of, and that's fine. A lot of people say you have to be gifted your first deck. Like, okay, gift yourself your first deck. If you want to read, then read. Just get a deck and read. So it's not exclusive and whatever. Now, how I read, I don't ask the person I'm reading for usually anything about their topic. So I do what's called a cold read, especially if I'm doing it for a stranger or if I'm doing it for money. And basically the idea is I just lay out the cards and I tell a story. And each one of these cards is personal to me because when I go through life and I go through a hard moment, I can be like, man, this is so, like I get her now. But then it helps me later on when I see somebody else have that card come up, be like, oh my gosh, do you have a person in your life like this Queen of Swords that was in my life? Do you have somebody in your life like this? And it just opens the door for a conversation, right? But it takes my experiences and makes them accessible outside of me. And also for somebody who doesn't even realize maybe that person is what's bothering them in their life, it gives them an opportunity to have somebody else say, can you recognize this in yourself? Can you recognize this in yourself? And just that process of trying to recognize, am I Cinderella or am I the stepsister? Right? Like, whoa, I never thought of that before. Just something inviting you to think about it differently is a very rewarding experience, and it's a very social experience. It's an experience that you often have to have with somebody else. And so that, again, that's why the reading of cards, I can read cards for myself and stuff, and that's fine. But it's part of why it can be so meaningful for people is because you put yourself out there, they put themselves out there, and you have a real conversation about something.
Holly, will you tell me my story? Do a
Ooh,
reading?
yeah. Okay, here. So do you have any cards with you?
Oh, not in this room. I don't. I
That's
should
okay.
have brought
I was
them.
going to say, for anybody who's listening to this, we can all participate. Everybody can participate. So if you have cards, pull them out. And I will do it for Andrea, but you can do it for yourself.
Hold on, I gotta get my cards.
So I'm going to use for you, this
Wait, where
is
are my cards?
the Muse Tarot, which it looks like this. It's a very, very strong feminine energy deck. That this is one that I've been using for like the past 6 years. Now I have a new one that I got, the Starman Tarot, which is like a Bowie deck, but I'm still practicing. I'm still learning that guy and learning about that one. So generally what you want to do, if you want to do a simple reading for somebody, you go past, present, future. So 1, 2, 3, you're going to lay out 3 cards. And you can mix up the cards however you want to. Some people like to spread them out on the table. A really common thing is you kind of want to just drop cards like this and just kind of shuffle them, right? And just go like that forever. You can riff them like you do a deck of cards. It's hard to do often because the decks are pretty large. And for you, Andrea, while I'm doing this, I'm just going to, for myself, think about you as I do it and think about, kind of along my line of chakras. So kind of going through my whole spinal cord and my system that connects me to the earth, to the sky. Breathe in and think about what you mean to me, how I feel about you, and what it would serve for you to hear from me right now. And while I'm doing it, I just kind of wait until it feels like I'm done, and I'm done. Now, I did the shuffling for you, but everybody, you can do this for anybody in your life. You can't, it's kind of rude to just read for somebody and be like, surprise, I read for you. Here's your future. When people need to invite you into this, there needs to be some kind of invitation, so you're not vampiring them. But you can say, I'm worried about this person. What can I know about how to serve them? Or you can say anything you want to, or you can do it for yourself. Okay, so now that I've got your cards ready, I'm going to lay them out. I do 3 cards. I'd like to lay them all out face up. And with this,
Wouldn't it be wild if we got the same cards?
That would be really wild.
finally,
Do you have the same deck?
we can prove that we're all connected. Okay, so
right.
I'm seeing 3 cards here. The first one is the 5 of emotions. So 5 cards are, 5 is a number that's a prime number. It's running its own thing. 5 points of a star. There's kind of a sharpness in the sense of this, and you can see that's really captured in the icy things that are going on. She's got the moon in her heart. That's a sign of feminine energy, right? But there's some mystery going on here. Like, it's not just big red heart beating heart. It's a cooler moon vibe of what's going on here with the mystery. Usually the 5, and swords are the element of air. So air usually has to do with thoughts and words and not so much emotions or things, right? Or passions. It's more of thinking through problems. The 5 card is related to, should I stay or should I go? So here she is standing, the Snow Queen in her ice kingdom, wondering, do I stay or do I go? And am I being called am I being called away, right? We got this going on. And what's my heart telling me with this? Okay, next card. That's past.
That's past. And boy, is that accurate.
What'd you get, Crystal?
I got the Chariot.
Oh, okay, cool. How does it show it to us? Okay, so Chariot's number 7, and it's a card of balance usually, right? Of moving forward, but by keeping the 2 things in alignment. How do you feel about that card, though? This is how anybody reads for anybody. How do you feel about that card?
I'm always scared of major arcana, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I love all of my cards, so.
What about that one? What do you see?
I see gold and silver, and somebody being carried in a chariot, obviously a woman. She's also she's looking askew, which is interesting. She's not looking at the camera, if you will, or forward. She's looking to her right, which to me feels like indifference, and maybe even snubbing something. Oh, and there's emeralds in it.
All right, how does it make you feel? What does that card feel like to you?
It feels rude.
Hey, you got a rude card. Okay. Cool. Move on to the present. And that's how you read, everybody. Because now, forever and ever, for Crystal, that card is the rude card. And if she pulls it up for somebody else, she says, somebody's being rude to you, right? Or if she pulls it up of, what do I need to do? And it's reversed, it's like, stop being rude. Like, you just, that's it. That's all it takes. You just do it card by card.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to address that card for me, that first one.
Yeah. Yes, please do.
Well, it is cold, I don't feel like it feels cold as in mean. I feel like it feels cold as in determined and sharp. It's like, this is my decision. This is what I'm doing. And so
Not
to me,
rude.
it feels, yeah, it just feels like clear, crystal clear.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is because in history, there's been times people said that I was too sharp and mean, but that doesn't feel this way to me. It feels like I've decided and now I'm doing it.
Mhm.
And so that's interesting to me, especially that it's the past. As Crystal said, that is definitely clear.
Just you saying that, like, it makes it look like she's taken this big sharp thing in her hand. It's become dust and powder in the wind, and it's becoming like a
Oh, I
life,
see
right? Like
that
that
now.
sharpness has become like so soft because she's so strong, you know, that she can like, yeah, grind that blade into the sands of life. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
see that now. I hadn't seen that. Thank you for pointing it
I
out.
love it. Yeah. I mean, we can look at
Mhm.
these all day long and do it, right? Like it can mean
Sure.
anything. I love it. Okay, let's do present. Present, you got the Ace of Wands, which looks like this, but you got it reversed. So you can read reverse cards or not read reverse cards. I like to read reverse cards as just you're resisting this energy or this energy is not working out for you. So Wands are the energy of fire, and the Ace card is this one of starting new creative, passionate things. So with it being reversed, it's either saying that now is not the time for new, don't go start a new, it's not so much business venture as it is like fiery, passionate art project right now. Don't do that right now. Or if you're doing it right now, it's not working out for you. So now she's got a succulent in her hair. She lives in the desert, you can tell by the way of this. And so the message, right, of there's all this stored up juiciness, all of this stored up juiciness and the water that's needed. And it's surrounded by this hot, passionate fire that's going on, right? And kind of the shape of the sun of the sunflower kind of vibe of the sun thing. So with it being reversed, I would say now is not the time to go out in a blaze of glory and just jump for that thing. Now is the time to juicy up with your succulent because the card's reversed, right? Make sure that you are healthy. Make sure that your plants that store your water for you are hydrated, type of thing, right? That's kind of the energy with that one.
Yeah, I like it. And actually also is easily, some people might say explained, but I've recently completed my joint replacements. I'm coming out of a very bad illness and leaning into what I've been building over the last year, but just have been stopped over and over again because of these physical things that have come up for me. So while it's interesting that you say it might not be the right time, what I got as soon as I saw it and it was reversed was that I get to lean into it, not push into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying the idea of like it's not lighting things on fire right now. It's storing up the succulents. It's you don't have to push it. You can lean into it, right? You don't have to break it.
Yeah.
You can just honestly allow it to do what it's doing. Like
Yeah.
you've built a beautiful structure. Allow it to fill itself up, you know.
Yeah.
Along those lines.
Yeah. I really, that's what it really felt like to me was leaning instead of pushing. Cause there have been a lot of times in my life where I've done we were talking last night about our vision boards. One of the ladies saying, I've got to stop pounding the round peg into the square hole. and she said, it just doesn't work. And it's like, well, yeah. And I have been about softening and leaning instead of pushing and forcing over the last year, especially. To me feels confirming and also reminding not to force something.
And I will also just, for people listening in, is it possible that what I'm saying could just be relatable to anybody and everybody? Yeah,
Mhm.
who cares?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Mhm.
It's relatable. Let's have a conversation. Andrea, you got this stuff going on in your life. It's serious. And like now we're talking about it, and that's the only thing that matters, right? For a good card reading, for a good spiritual connection with anybody, quite frankly. Anyway, so Crystal, did you pull
I got the Knight of Swords.
I think I just talked about him.
There
The blue guy on a horse.
And also there's a purple owl in the tree.
Hey.
So turquoise used to be my least favorite color, my least favorite stone. Now it's one of my favorite colors and one of my favorite stones. So this card, I like the colors, the purple and the teal or the turquoise. This feels like empowerment, and yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that, empowerment.
Okay, so in the past, rude. In the present, empowerment. So simple, relatable. How do you feel about it?
Okay, this is like way deep and personal, but I feel like I keep getting this message and having a hard time believing it. That like I'm powerful and I can, like, for example, I have I have a couple disabilities. I also have to have a hip replaced, just like Andrea did. And it feels impossible to ever be fully mobile again, for example.
Yeah.
But I do keep getting this message. So
Yes, and I can tell you that you will, because it has made all the difference.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
one of the things too is shared experience, like you were talking about before, having stories that we now have. Although we knew about this connection, if we didn't know each other, we would probably still be in a group that somebody would have had a connection that could support each other on these thoughts.
how relatable is it though, right? Of like being immobile and then like approaching mobility for the first time. Like I kind of feel that way even with like my PhD dissertation. It took me 8 years to finish it. And like now that I'm done, I'm like, I can do anything, like I was locked into this thing for so long and now I'm not. And it's like, what does that mean? And that's a relatable. It's relatable and it's unbelievable, I think, for most of us to be right on the edge of it.
Well, and also if we look at some of what we start feeling comfortable in, 8 years of building a thesis, how many years of being reduced mobility, that's where we're comfortable. And so now our comfort or our feeling of sometimes being settled or something, I'm not sure how a person might relate to the word, but that gets shifted a little. So is there a moment of uncomfortableness because now things get to look different?
Mhm.
And I suspect our future card could give us some insight on that.
Yeah.
All right, future card. Here we go. 3 of emotions, 3 of cups. So this is not a major arcana card, it's a minor arcana card, but you can see this is what I call the goddess sisterhood card. You have the 3 sisters raising their cups together. Hey, just like the 3 of us right now.
That's what I was just thinking.
Right. Pouring out kind of this goddess energy. And I mean, this is, in terms of what we've just been talking about this whole time, right? This is the community vibe to things. So for you personally, Andrea, lean into your sisters, because not when we do, and this doesn't mean just for women, of course. I call it the goddess sisterhood vibe because this is a very common thing for women to do with one another. But to form these networks of people that we co-create with, and that we, pour out abundance. We're able to pour out abundance into the world when we come together. These women are, pouring their cups out. They're just sharing it and pouring it out. So I mean, there you go.
Yeah, and I completely agree. This Lady Society that I've been involved with, I was thinking about it the other day, wondering if I would have been leaning into it as much in my history as I am now, because they feel like very safe arms to be in. And not enabling sort of arms, but just safe, and doing what that picture just did, pouring their cups for me. And I remember we were talking about having been at Lisa's house for a variety of things. I remember one time, I don't remember if both of you were there, but there was someone who came and did a reading, and she came to me and she said that she saw so much feminine energy around me. So much feminine. She said, in fact, I've never seen anyone with no masculine energy around in my spiritual realm view, or I'm not actually sure what it's really called, but in that supportive role. She said, I've never seen anyone that had no male support, only female. And that really struck me, because in my professional history, I've always had to be pretty stern and authoritarian, if you will. And I noticed that I thought a lot about that, why I had so much feminine energy. And through my life, I feel like I've really gotten to look at how to balance that, because it's pretty easy for me to get unbalanced on the masculine, which isn't bad. I mean, having a balance is good, but being too far one way or another, for me at least, doesn't work. So it's interesting that Three of Cups card comes up again too. And I like that that's been a theme since at least 2006 in my life that I've been aware of. So that's pretty cool.
Good for you
Yeah.
and good for everybody. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
What about you, Crystal?
Oh, the High Priestess.
Hey, number 2.
I've gotten this actual card like 5 times in a row, I think.
That's the
Ugh.
Gilded Tarot deck. So if
There it
anybody
is.
wants to look it up, you can just do an internet search of Gilded Tarot High Priestess. It's one of my favorite cards of that deck.
And
Nice.
the irony of this
And
one
what's
is
it
she's
mean?
fully mobile, floating. So yeah, this is like, I don't know the traditional meaning, and I know, Holly, you would say the traditional meaning doesn't necessarily matter, but this feels to me, this is interesting too, because she's got stars in her hair. She's got I don't know if it's a globe or a circlet, but she's got something with a dome in it with a green light on top. And to me that feels like oh man, that feels like the Golden Compass type energy. The Golden Compass victory, the end of the Golden Compass, where, you know, the victory part of it. That's what it feels like to me.
So your reading goes from, if we're doing
Rude,
the keyword thing, rude. What was the second one? Oh, Knight of Swords.
empowered,
Empowered. Rude, empowered. And then what's the third one?
the High Priestess.
Hey, you're like just what the high priest, exactly what you mean. Well, she's the guardian of feminine energy, and she's also, the idea of the high priestess is like Persephone and the gates to the underworld and the protector of all those pomegranate seeds that are the seeds of life, right? Like it's the ultimate deep wisdom of womanhood. In the same way, like the Emperor card is about building big monuments and statues, right? The High Priestess card is about exploring hidden depths and, you know, weaving things together in different ways. All that being said, this is my take on spirituality, right? I think that what we do is we just have access to things and sharing it with people in conversations and small groups, right? Using tools like tarot. What I like about tarot is it's a really balanced tool. It has a lot of, you know, ups and downs and in betweens, and people have been using it for thousands of years because it's relatable. But it's really kind of like a conversation starter, even.
And
right?
it's impartial, right?
Yeah, it's impartial. For me, it makes me think about things in new ways I never would have thought about them before. And that's really refreshing when I'm stuck, because sometimes I just need a new perspective.
The impartial piece I really like, because I could walk up to either one of you and say, you need to be softer, you need to be this, and you need to be that. Well, that's going to work. And in this case, these cards and this method and many other methods that we've talked about give an opportunity to say, this is something to consider. The end. You can take it for something that encourages you on a path. It can take you on a different path, or you can not take it at all. And it's okay. And we're still friends because, yeah, I didn't say it. Now, Holly, is there maybe a time that you read your tarot that it meant one of the most things? Is there an experience that you had that you just went, oh my gosh, I can't believe something?
Like
Is
maybe there
there
was
a really
life
momentous-
altering or
Well,
Right.
definitely that first time. And then I couldn't read for myself for a long time because I'd get too biased and hopeful, right? So I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna read for myself. Give me the High Priestess card. Give me the High Priestess card. No, I should have shuffled that differently. Let me try it again. Give me the High Priestess card, right? Like I was going into it too much with like the hopes of it would validate what I wanted validation for. So for a long time, I only read for other people. Now but I also, during that time, I still use it as a tool for philosophy. So there is, or sorry, not philosophy, for self-reflection. I have a website. I have a blog. I think it's still up at xhollysuit.blogspot.com, whatever that is now, because Google bought everything. But I had a bunch of posts I wrote where I would pull a card a day, and I did it for, I think, maybe for like a dozen days or something. And I would write a blog post about an experience of my life that was associated with that card to demonstrate kind of how to journal, you know, your experiences with cards, and also for me to kind of create a tool for self-reflection, almost like a memoir of sorts. And it's still up there. And there are a couple of those posts that have gone really viral, honestly. Um, Especially with people who've left the Mormon church. A lot of my posts were about the pain of losing my religion and the sorrow of losing the only community I'd known how to build. And it turns out if you raised your whole life building Mormon community, it's not exactly a transferable skill for building community elsewhere in the world.
Mhm.
Like, and so I had to, heal through that and figure out how to get through it and work through it. But posting those reflections later on in life became very, very meaningful to a whole group of people. And a couple of them went viral, and I got some messages saying that they meant a lot to them.
It is
So in
still
terms,
at xhollysue.blogspot.com, by the way.
yeah. So if you want to go check those out, they're kind of fun. What I like about it is though that those were not readings. That was just me processing my feelings, and that was more, I think, has been more impactful for people than me actually giving them readings, and giving. So that's why I don't do a lot of one-on-one readings. I don't sell readings anymore. If I were to get back into reading for like money or for like as like a gig or career thing, I would probably teach how to read tarot and make it focused on teaching people to use it as a tool for well-being and for, peace and love on earth. One of the other things is it can be really intimate for the other person and not for me at this stage. So for you, for somebody that's a complete stranger and they gave me $15 and I just like connected with you on a very personal level in a way that you haven't experienced in a long time, it's not like that for me anymore. Like I've done enough that that's not that personal for me. And so I'm also a little bit wary of making sure that I don't go into situations where it means more to the person I'm reading for than it does for me.
Well, and that they think that it's you and not the reading.
Right. They think that me being a vulnerable card reader means that we're best friends. And that also is not true. My best friends contact me about once every 10 months. So
Well, let's see, your birthday and Christmas. Yeah,
that's about all you need, right?
that's funny. I've talked with a lot of people who do healing type work, and I feel like one of the things to remember for myself anyway, that may be along this line, is that when I think I'm the healer, I'm no longer doing the work. And it may feel like that to you, that that's not what it's about. I am the conduit of energy exchange. I am not the healer.
Right.
And so to me, that related, what you said relates in that way for me for energy work and that sort of thing. So
I'm going to kind of steer us a little bit in a different direction, because I think it's an important message that doesn't get shared often enough. At the beginning of this podcast, Holly Sue, you talked about the Hollywood cards. Can you tell us what you mean by that and what the truer interpretation of those cards looks like?
Sure. So what do we got? We got the death card, of course. So death card can mean death, right? Can mean something's going to end permanently. And that's, I think, really what the idea of death is permanent end to that thing. But it can also mean like, permanent ends are really good for some things, right? Like, isn't it cool that high school's permanently over for us?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
that's a
gosh.
good thing. That's a really good thing. So at some point, death is something that we can all be happy for, and we can all appreciate. Some things we want to permanently end, other things we don't. And so that makes it scary. And so the idea, kind of like if you're getting the death card, in whatever position you're getting it in, the energy that card's usually carrying with it is like something has to stop. It has to. And there's no choice here. It has to stop. And sometimes the person in the person that you're reading for is being invited to make it stop. Sometimes they're being prepared. We're going to put the brakes on this. Don't crash into the wall. Put your seatbelt on. There's lots of different things that this is going to stop means. But that's the death card, right? And death is a great word for that. And it's a great message that we sometimes need to be hearing in our lives, and that we sometimes need to be, reflecting on in our lives. Hanged man. Hanged man is hanged upside down by his ankle. That guy's not being hung. He's seeing a whole new perspective of life. So, I mean, that card really makes me think of like Mel Gibson in the opening scene of Maverick, where he's got like the noose on him and his horse is under him and they have snakes under the horse. And he's like, oh, Lord, save me. And then his boot comes off and it's full of money and like the whole thing falls apart. the Hanged Man is about like, wow, you're in this really bad situation and you've got money in your boot and the world has turned you upside down and is shaking you. What are you going to do about that? Now, in some cases, let them shake you. In some cases, you need to get out of there. In some cases, call a friend, right? But that's a pretty relatable way of existing, right? How many of us have been shook upside down and we had to decide what we were going to do about it? If we were going to laugh about it or get mad about it or retaliate. But the shaking is something worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Other ones, you want a 10 of swords. You've taken on too much. You've overwhelmed yourself and you're using your words way too much, right? You were just gunning people down with your words and getting gunned down in return, in the sense that the 10 of swords just shows somebody with 10 swords in their back.
Mm-hmm.
Swords represent words, right? Like there's too much here. You went way too far. You got to back off, and so on. I mean, they're just relatable human experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that you call those Hollywood cards?
Yeah, it's so fun to watch anytime there's like a Hollywood movie and they pull out like tarot cards and they're like, it's like, which one's it gonna be? The Hanged Man. Oh, look, I just got the devil right there on the top. The devil, right? What does the devil card
Oh, a
mean?
Hollywood card.
Yeah, Hollywood card. You got
But,
the devil.
You know, you get death, and it's like the music suddenly turns moody and dark and scary.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was a
These
new
are the
thing to
cards
me. I'm
that
like, I don't
in
know.
every Hollywood movie, these are the cards that come up. There's like 4 of them, and like there's like 72 other cards, y'all. But
That's hilarious.
okay.
Yeah, I'd never heard that, and I was like, I don't understand the correlation. So I'm suspecting some of our listeners might not have either. So
Well, that's kind of why I
awesome.
wanted
Thanks
to
for
bring us
sharing
back
that.
to it. Yeah. So that it wasn't just something flippant that our listeners were left wondering about.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share about tarot, Holly, or any advice or other words of encouragement you might want to give our audience for approaching tarot?
Yeah, I just do it. If you're drawn to it and you want to try it out, there's in my personal experience, you're not dealing with like spirits or matches or anything. It's a system of thinking through your place in the world and in humanity, and it's a way to get close to people. And I think that that's like a powerful way especially for people who don't have a lot of access to resources, like they can't get therapy and they can't get group, therapy. You can't pay for these types of things. Well, you can go to a library, you can learn some things about these old tools of connecting with people, and you can give people free readings and just see what happens and see if it helps you feel better to connect with people, right? And so I would encourage people to think of it as a tool for personal growth and also for connecting with the collective unconscious, right? Connecting with the human archetypes that are the building blocks of our psychology.
I love that.
Me too.
Great. Well, on that note, we'd love to hear from our listeners. Please contact us at mysticdetectives.com to leave a comment, share a story, or ask a question. As always, we invite you to subscribe, share, and leave reviews to support the podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Stay curious
And keep exploring.